the one and only Just Cap Entertainment. Today, we're diving deep into the world of Cold Pursuit, a 2019 action thriller that's sure to leave you on the edge of your seat. Our story begins in the quaint town of Kehoe, where Nels Coxman and his lovely wife Grace lead a peaceful existence. Enter Carl, the Coxman's son who works at the local airport. And wouldn't you know it, on the night that Nels is honored with the Citizen of the Year award, Carl and his pal Dante get kidnapped. Talk about a party foul. Things go from bad to worse when Carl is given a lethal dose of heroin and meets his untimely demise. But Dante manages to escape, and the hunt for the kidnappers begins. In the mile-high city, Denver, Viking, the drug cartel leader, wanted his son Ryan to dish out some serious beatdowns at school to teach the bullies a lesson. But Ryan, being the non-violent sort, gave his dad the thumbs down. Meanwhile, in the peaceful town of Kehoe, Nels Coxman and his wife Grace received a heartbreaking phone call informing them of Carl's passing. The doctor said their boy died from a drug overdose, but Coxman, being a suspicious fella, was not buying it. After all, Carl never touched the stuff. Unable to handle his grief, Coxman wanted to shoot himself. But suddenly Dante appears out of nowhere. He tells Coxman what had happened to his son. Enraged by what he hears and decides to look for Speedo. First on his hit list is Speedo, who Coxman suspects had a hand in Carl's death. After an intense confrontation, Speedo meets his demise at the hands of the determined snowplow driver. But the killing spree doesn't stop there. Coxman's next target is Limbo, the boss of the drug ring responsible for Carl's overdose. After Speedo dies, his body is thrown at the river. With a single-minded focus and a snowplow at the ready, Limbo doesn't stand a chance against the determined avenger. Next Limbo die too, and share the same fate as Speedo. While Coxman is out seeking justice, Viking, a drug cartel leader in Denver, remains blissfully unaware of the chaos happening in Kehoe. He carries on with his daily routine, dropping his son Ryan off at school and living his best cartel life. Back at home, Coxman's wife Grace has her own issues to deal with. She's not thrilled that Nels didn't have a stronger relationship with their son Carl. In Denver, Viking's ex-wife paid him a visit and dropped the bombshell that she was filing for custody of their son, Ryan. Viking tried to sweeten the pot with some cash, but she wouldn't bite. Just when he thought things couldn't get any worse, he found out that Limbo was MIA and started freaking out, grilling his employees in the process. Meanwhile, Coxman continued his murder streak, taking out another goon by the name of Santa who was involved in Carl's kidnapping. But when he got back home, he realized that Grace had hit the road because she was ticked off with his ice-cold demeanor. So, Coxman went to chat with his brother Brock, who used to be part of a gang, to get some intel on Viking's crew. It turned out that Carl was in the wrong place at the wrong time and got mixed up in some gold heist. But when Coxman spilled the beans about his plans to avenge his son, Brock wasn't so sure that he had the guts to do the job. Meanwhile, Viking got wind of Santa's vanishing act and suspected that his rival, White Bull, was behind it. He was pretty peeved, considering they had an agreement to stay out of each other's hair. Now, he was planning on serving up a dish of revenge to teach them a lesson. Things are really heating up in this small town. Viking, the drug lord, is playing a dangerous game, kidnapping and killing people left and right. But when he accidentally takes out the only son of his rival, White Bull, it's clear that things are about to get even more intense. Luckily, we've got detectives Kim Dash and John Gibbs on the case. While Gibbs may be a little hesitant, Dash is ready to jump in and save the day. With their powers combined, they're determined to keep the peace in this town, no matter what it takes. Meanwhile, Nels Coxman is on his own mission for revenge. With the help of his brother, he's learned the true identity of Viking, Trevor. And if he wants to take him out, he's going to need to hire a professional hitman. Enter Eskimo, who Brock recommends as the best of the best. But things get a little dicey when Coxman tries to pay Eskimo up front. The hitman thinks he might be dealing with a cop, but after a little bit of convincing, Coxman is able to prove that he's not wearing a wire, and Eskimo is ready to get to work. So, Eskimo basically pulled a double cross on Coxman and went to Viking to spill the beans. He spilled so much that he got shot for it. It turns out that Viking wasn't too happy that Coxman wanted him dead and was determined to find out more about him. Viking then picked up Brock and offered him a ride. Viking was all like, "Why did you kill my men, dude?" and threatened to take him out. Since Brock was already dying of rectal cancer, he decided to save his brother and took the blame for the murders. He made up some story about wanting revenge on Viking because his dad had stolen his girl, and Viking bought it hook, line, and sinker. But then Viking decided that he didn't like the cut of Brock's jib and shot him too. Meanwhile, the rival gang leader White Bull was all torn up about his son's murder. He shared that there was this old deal between their fathers, but since Viking's gang had repaid it with murder, the deal was off. He planned to take revenge on Viking and decided to do it the old-fashioned way, a son for a son. After figuring out that Eskimo didn't kill him, Coxman decided to spy on Viking's house. He saw Viking with his son and learned that his son went to a fancy school. Ooh la la, this just got interesting. Viking, on the other hand, had a different idea. He wanted to reinforce his deal with White Bull by sending him a gift. He shot his own man Dexter and sent his head over to White Bull. Yikes. White Bull had been itching for revenge ever since Viking killed his son, and now he had sent his goons to kidnap Viking's son Ryan from his school. So when White Bull's messenger arrived with Dexter's head as a gift, Viking was ready to play along and reassure him that everything was cool. But that didn't stop White Bull from shooting the messenger anyway, insisting that he only wanted Viking's son in exchange for his own. Meanwhile, Detective Kim was trying to unravel the mystery of Carl's death. She suspected foul play, and thought that Dante at the airport might be involved. But when she went to Coxman for help, he was still deep in his grief over losing his son and didn't want anything to do with it. Poor Kim was on her own. Coxman wasn't just moping around, though. He was on a mission to find Ryan and make sure he was safe. When he showed up at Ryan's school claiming to be sent by his dad, Ryan was understandably wary. But Coxman managed to convince him to come with him, just in time for them to be chased by White Bull's men. Viking was also hot on the trail of his son, determined to get him back. His wife wasn't too happy about the whole situation, though, and started arguing with him. But Viking was confident that he could handle it and get Ryan back safe and sound. After all, what could go wrong? So, White Bull's goons got a hot tip on Dexter's whereabouts and wasted no time tracking him down and getting rid of him. Meanwhile, White Bull and his crew were lurking around a ski resort in Co., keeping an eye on Viking and his posse. Coxman showed up at Viking's place with Ryan in tow and offered to whip up some grub for the gang. Viking asked about Coxman's family and he replied that he didn't have one. But despite this, Coxman treated Ryan like a prince, even letting him crash in his late son's room. And after reading him a bedtime story, Coxman took Ryan out for a joyride on his snowplow. As for the other guys, they were having a blast at the resort. But White Bull was still feeling the pain of losing his son and was itching to get back to Denver for some payback. Viking's boys brought in a janitor from the school who let slip that Coxman had taken Ryan. Viking put two and two together and realized he had been barking up the wrong tree the whole time. He got on the horn with Coxman and arranged to make the exchange for Ryan. But instead, Viking sent his team to raid Coxman's house, only to find out that Coxman had taken Ryan out for a spin on his snowplow. As they were driving, they stumbled upon a cop car and Coxman passed Ryan off as his nephew. The cop mentioned that he had seen a lot of cars at Coxman's house, and that's when Coxman realized Viking was on his tail. White Bull's gang got a hot tip on Ryan's whereabouts and headed out to hunt him down, but they weren't the only ones on the prowl. Coxman wasn't about to let them get their grubby paws on Ryan without a fight, so he busted out his trusty gun and got ready to rumble. Unfortunately, Coxman was interrupted by Ryan, who was understandably freaked out by all the gunfire. Coxman stashed him inside and told him to stay put until he came back. He took a few shots at Viking and his crew, but before he could get a word in edgewise, White Bull and his goons showed up and all hell broke loose. It was a bloodbath out there, folks. Both sides took heavy casualties, but eventually Coxman managed to trap Viking in his car, and White Bull put him out of his misery with a well-placed shot. Coxman and White Bull hopped in the truck and took off, just as the cops showed up to sort things out. But the chaos wasn't quite over yet. As Ryan drove away in Coxman's trusty snowplow, the last remaining gang member showed up on a parachute and got flattened like a pancake. The end. Thanks for tuning in, friends. If you want more crazy action like this, be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and smash that like button. See you next time.